Hi everyone, this is our second night on our navigation series. I'd just like to welcome you all.
Happy to be spending this time with you guys. So in this series, we're looking at the idea of how with all the different messages and content and ideas that are swirling around us every single day, it can be difficult to navigate through all the noise. Now, we talked about last week the idea that we have our own internal compass that we follow. It's that voice that guides us, telling us if the path that we're following is good or bad. Now, most of us as adults, we have a fairly developed internal compass. Not always saying that our internal compass is tuned into what's truly right or truly good. Some people have interesting paths that they follow, but all of us have a sense of following our idea of what is good and bad. We have this developed inside of us. Now, when it comes to our kids, they're at a place right now where they're developing their own internal compass, and they're learning whether they can trust it and how to follow it. Now, when it comes to us as parents, one of our major roles is helping our kids to navigate through all the noise and all the stuff that's swirling around them, all the different messages and content that they're consuming. But more than just navigating for them, we want to help them to really develop a solid internal compass for themselves, something that will be able to lead them through life so that when they do get out on their own, they can navigate through life and avoid shipwreck. Today we're going to start by looking at a parable that Jesus told us in Matthew chapter 7.
Building on a solid foundation. Anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it is wise, like a person who builds a house on solid rock. Though the rain comes in torrents and the floodwaters rise and the winds beat against that house, it won't collapse because it is built on bedrock. But anyone who hears my teachings and doesn't obey is foolish, like a person who builds a house on sand. When the rains and floods come and the winds beat against that house, it will collapse with a mighty crash.
Jesus points out that we should build our lives on him and on his teachings. And this is more than just knowing stuff that he said. This is taking his word and his teaching and letting it guide our choices and inform our paths and the direction we choose to take. Kind of like following a compass. You're not going to get to where you want to go if you ignore its leadings. And if we ignore what Jesus teaches us, we're not going to get to where we want to be. Now, we don't want to get the cart before the horse in this. Before you can start following Jesus' teachings, you kind of need to know what they are. And it's the same thing for our kids. And herein lies the problem that many parents face. How do we teach our kids biblical truths in ways that will make sense to them and stick with them? Here's the truth that I've learned over the years in regards to communication. Just because you've said something doesn't mean that you've really communicated it. Another way to put this would be, just because you said something doesn't mean that your kids really understood what you said. So how do we make these connections? Well, today we're going to be talking about learning preferences. These are the ways that kids and adults learn best. Now, there's 4 main learning preferences that people lean into. The first is kinetic, then there's visual, there's auditory, and then there's the written word, and this is reading and writing. So you might be wondering, what are those? So kinesthetic is learning with activity. It's hands-on. It's active engagement in what you're learning. Visual is by watching things, seeing things, observing. Audible is listening. It's hearing somebody teach or talk, or sometimes it's engaging in conversation and hearing the back and forth. And written word is just that. It's reading, it's writing, it's books, it's taking notes. It's all kinds of stuff that fall into that category. So Marlena, do you want to talk about what that looks like for us?
Sure. One learning style I often use myself for our kids a lot is visual. Well, I guess we both use it a lot because we do movie nights together and we have our TV shows that we like and whatnot. For example, just a couple of nights ago, we were relaxing with the kids. We were watching the TV show Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous. Some of you may know it. During one episode, there was a scene that could have displayed perfectly God's sovereignty, his protection and love, way better than I could have explained it in terms that they could comprehend. Excited and thanking God for that idea, I paused the show and I went on to recall details from the very beginning when things were great compared to now, so they got to see how the author had planned from the beginning for this character to have a protector. I use this scene to teach how God knows what we need, and we can trust him and have faith to hang on in the gloomiest of times, because God is always taking care of us and will give us what we need. And really, it registered. At one point, my son had choked up and gave me back his own version of what he took in of what I said, and from the understanding of the story that he took. Jesus always taught in parables, and I see the two very similar in that regard. We love our movies here at our house. With the help of graphics and some awesome production, it's so easy to really perceive a deeper message. And it's a double whammy when you get the opportunity to use it to teach a biblical perspective, because it's so hard to forget something you connect with emotionally. The next one I find I use a lot is verbal. Asking them details about their day, what they did in school, stuff that happened with friends, going down a conversation rabbit hole. It gives me lots of opportunity. I have a lot of conversation success after school when they get picked up, supper time, and time before bed, laying down that 5 to 10 minutes with them as I tuck them in. You'd be surprised what you didn't find out earlier on in that day that you get the opportunity to go over with them at night. Maybe it's they're trying to push off that bedtime for a couple minutes, but hey, if you get that opportunity to have a little bit of a closer heart to heart, it's worth it.
Absolutely. And that's one of those areas too where you can really speak life into the situations that they're dealing with at school, or stuff that happened just throughout their day. It's really awesome.
I agree. The next one for our kinesthetic, we play board games. Sometimes we go for walks. If we've been too cooped up in the house, we sometimes go for fast food. Obviously we stay in the van these days, so it's like a ride slash,
Family outing.
Yeah, and occasional sledding, crafting. I probably don't do some of these as often as I like or I should, but these things really give us some great bonding time together when we do have them, even if it's occasional. It's memories being made and connection being made. I've found both verbal and kinesthetic essential here. Creating that relationship with your child, I think, is so important for them to be able to trust your opinions and perspectives over ones that they can learn from other people close to them elsewhere. We have seen a disconnection with our own individual relationships with our kids at times if we've been too busy to spend that fun quality time with them over too long of a period. Also seen them act out in negative behaviors too because of it. So finding 2 to 3 things your kid likes to do and to switch it up, find what you like to do together and build some personal connection is important. I see kinesthetic learning like a gas in a vehicle. When you're driving, you don't really think about the gas until your gas gauge flashes. Same goes for this personal time. I find it's essential for the relationship to run, but you don't need to be at it all the time. But you do need to remember to fill that tank once in a while. Reading and writing. This past year, we've really grown in this one with both of our school kids. Our daughter is 9 years old, and at the age of 6, she developed a huge fear of getting sick, which spiraled into high anxiety and some bad habits and some really tough nights. Actually, all the nights for the past 3 years. So you fast forward 3 years later to late last year, just before Christmas, we got her a girly journal. We encouraged her to write all of her thoughts and prayers to God, good and bad, and just not put a filter on her, but just something that she can unload emotionally. This must have been a strong learning area for her. We didn't really recognize it. We tried this before, but we got consistent with it and helped her to do this nightly. So it must be a strong learning area for her, because with consistency, it took off. And I'm so happy to say she's no longer controlled by any fears and loves her bed and like she did before. We got to really see God change her thought process. We've seen this work so well with her. We also started letting her son do the exact same thing. He's enjoyed it, but you can tell it's not really
not to the same level.
Not really to the same level or his way of expressing or learning. Reading is one area where we could do more, to be honest. Both me and Ryan are not big readers, and it shows. But we are trying to improve that one. We just ordered a book series from an author we have followed in the past. He has this kids book series out. The author is Ted Decker. You can look it up or message us if you're interested. But it's in the mail, and we're excited. We're going to do this as a family to try and just check this one out and see if it can spark some interest. I think the imagination is a very powerful tool that doesn't get used to the extent maybe it was made for. And I really want to end with this whole talk that we're doing. I don't convert every opportunity with them into a spiritual one. Too much drawing away from your intimate moments could create a very negative response in receiving anything you're trying to teach. We can do too much in our own strength. I really do believe that. You want these moments with God to be sporadic, beautiful, and practical. I believe God gives us clarity in those moments if we're looking for them. Sometimes it's just life advice. Other times it comes like a divine appointment for me, and you just know. I'm thankful for those moments because I don't fully know what will come from it, but I know that God has a plan in it and actively working in my relationship to bring it about.
Absolutely. Now here's the thing, each one of us has our primary learning styles. This is the way that we tend to learn best. But similar to our love languages, the primary learning styles aren't the only way that we can learn. They're often the way that we learn best and prefer to learn, but that doesn't mean that we're completely isolated to just that one concept. Now, with all this said, everything that we've gone through so far, I really want to point out that it's very critical that we don't just want our kids to know about God or to know what God says. We want them to encounter God. You see, God is not a God of just rules and expectations. He's a God of relationship and of connection. He wants us to know him and to love him. And if you look at the two greatest commandments, it's love God and love people. And if we're missing this connection point with God, it doesn't matter what we know. We can have all kinds of knowledge. We can know everything, but without love, it doesn't really amount to much. So one thing that we've looked at in the past is the idea of Sacred Pathways, which is a fantastic book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. But it looks at the different ways people connect to God. And when we can bring this into our family relationships and when we can look at how our kids connect best to God, it can really change things for this idea of them developing this internal compass, because they don't just know God said do this, but they have a connection to this God that loves them and that has their best interest at heart. And when they know God and when they have that connection, it's far easier to follow. And we often say rules without relationship leads to rebellion. And I think the same with us and God. If we think God is just this cosmic lawgiver, we're not going to be inclined to follow him the same way as if we see him as this loving father that we're deeply connected with. Now, one thing that's come up in the past with research is this, the idea of there's a great value found in things like summer camps and church retreats and different events like YC that have gone on here in Alberta in the past. But great events where kids can go and just really engage with other people their age in connecting with God. VBS is also a great option where people can go and just get that deeper opportunity to connect with God. Things like this have been shown to have a really strong impact on kids' faith development.
Today, things look a lot different. We can't do the same sorts of stuff, but there's other ways I think that we can try to incorporate or give a little bit of the similar feel. I've thought, like, my daughter loves to dance, so I've thought about maybe doing that a little bit with her. Now she's younger, so if you have a teenager, it's probably not going to work, but I've thought about just doing this with her. I mean, it's actually pretty well incorporated in our dinner preparations anyway. Some days all of us are in the kitchen, and it's just what happens. We also purchased these wireless earbuds, and I have given these to my daughter at bedtime sometimes. So she's journaling some nights, and other nights she'll have these earbuds, and we'll just turn on worship music, and she can listen to the kid worship music that she can relate to. And it's not the same, but nothing's the same nowadays.
Yeah. Be creative. Look for options to really dig into this side. Now, here's the thing. We want our kids' internal compass shaped by and built on the truth of Jesus. But as with most good things in life, this doesn't just happen. It takes some intentionality, and it takes being engaged in the process from us as parents. So we just want to encourage you guys to engage in the process. Look at different ways, and it's not something that always comes naturally, but when we take the time to really look at our kids' learning styles, when we take the time to look at their the way they connect best with God, we can really invest in building the basics for their internal compass. All right, guys, so this brings us to the end of this week's video. With that said, we want to invite you guys out to our next Parents' Night. I think we've said this just about every time, but Parents' Night is not meant to be just a video that you guys watch or a podcast you listen to and then you're done. This is meant to be a point where parents engage with other parents, and we have conversation, we work through the difficulties and the questions and the thoughts that we have on all this stuff together. So with that said, our next Parents' Night is going to be February 11th, 2021. We're going to be doing this via Zoom, and so if you'd like to join with us, just let us know, and we will send you guys the connection points.
We love to have you out with us. Bring a coffee. It's very chill. We don't have all the answers, and it's just a bunch of parents just getting together. So whether you're a part of a church, our church, or not, we would still love to have you.
We would love to spend the evening with you, for sure. And it only lasts about an hour, so you don't have to give up your whole night, but it's definitely worthwhile. We always have a great time. With that said, we will see you guys next time.
Bye.